What is up, everybody? You're about to listen to episode 61 of the Twin Sunz podcast, brought to you by RuneterraCCG.com. As always, it's a fantastic site for articles, meta-analysis, deck breakdowns, opinion pieces, you name it. It also has a full deck builder and meta tier list, so if you aren't tuned in to that site, you need to get on that. One of the best tools I use for in-game and out-of-game, just learning about Legends of Runeterra. This week I'm joined by RiotGMajor. He is the lead designer on all three of Shurima's expansions, and it's been an absolute blast to talk to him on our previous episode with him, and now again for the release of Guardians of the Ancient. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll catch you at the end of it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Twin Sunz podcast, episode 61. And today we are joined by an extremely special guest here. Second podcast with us, RiotGMajor. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here on Twin Sunz the second time. Why are you all called Twin Sunz?
I hate answering this question so much.
Okay, no, you don't have to answer that.
It's fine. It's relevant. It's May 5th. It's release day. Yesterday was May the 4th. It's a Star Wars reference from Tatooine.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, I'm a Star Wars fanatic. It's my username, so I just kind of ran with it. Yeah,
okay, cool.
It's terrible. I just tell people it's for Daybreak, just so.
I was hoping it was about the sun disk, and just such a fan of Shurima, but you know it's okay.
I'm not gonna lie. Once Shurima came out, we completely rebranded, and our emblem is now the relic from the thing. So we're now going with that. If that makes it any better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
It's a terrible answer. But yeah, thanks for literally creating our brand now. Thank you.
Cool. I'm happy to do my part.
Fantastic. Well, welcome back. For those who didn't catch the previous episode, real quick, RiotGMajor is the lead designer of all three of these expansions coming up. So Empires of the Ascended, Guardians of the Ancient, which just dropped, and then the last one, which is something Underworlds. I forget. I'm terrible. But yes.
Yeah, I believe it's Rise of the Underworlds.
Rise of the Underworlds. So, yeah, you worked on all three of those, right? Prepped for all three of those releases and oversaw that entire process, right?
Yeah, like the Shurima block or whatever. And obviously I work with other designers, including a sort of someone who's more in charge of like game health and environment design, and I'm not the live designer, so it's a group effort. But yeah, I was the sort of lead design vision holder for the set.
Very nice.
Or, for the block of sets, or however you want to call it, yeah.
Right, yeah, the mini expansion and the main release. So it's been just about 2 months since the Empires of the Ascended dropped. How have you felt about the initial release? Were you pretty pleased with what you saw? Anything that you weren't happy with? Just in general, how do you feel about it?
I think I've been mostly happy with it, although in some ways it's kind of early to say in a way, because we kind of designed the blocks as a group, and so it's like, part of the role of A is to be a fun jumping off point for bigger themes. And so I'm kind of curious how those sort of loop back, where it's like, hey, once this expansion comes out, are people excited to revisit their landmark decks with Malphite and the advanced cards? Obviously are they excited to revisit, Azir and other cards with, Irelia? And so there's in some ways it's sort of too early to say, even though we're at the next set. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought players seemed pretty excited for a lot of the champs, and I hope they're excited for the next set of champs. And I think there was some where it was it didn't land exactly how I thought it might in terms of what's strong or weak, but that's kind of to be expected to some degree. It's which version of the Watcher deck is going to come out on top? Right. I don't really know. How degenerate will it be? We'll see. Kind of a risky space, but that's also part of the fun. So yeah.
Very, very good. I mean, I totally agree. I think I've been having an absolute blast with, excuse me, all of Shurima in general. So, I mean, from the get-go, I liked it. It's definitely tough as far as, the region is getting split instantaneously. So right from the get-go, you have 5 out of the 7 Shuriman champions. So like you said, there's so many things that came out this time that are really pushing forward old archetypes. For instance, Talia didn't feel insanely powerful, but now she might be completely revisited with Malphite support and advanced support and all that. So it's definitely tough to see that type of think from the outside looking in, being like, well, just wait, like it's coming, because now we got to see what got teased, and like you said, Azir got direct support with Irelia, Malphite supports all sorts of different things. So
Yeah, yeah, it's weird because like so much of like the set development, we're trying all these different things from the future, and then like seeing how players experience that over time is like kind of a different experience where it's like
yeah,
um yeah, it's like the non uh the non-advance Watcher deck was the one we tried last. And so now people are experiencing, like, it's
oh
almost in
wow,
reverse order. It's like we designed with Lissandra with advanced cards first, and then made sure that the alternatives also
hmm.
were fun and reasonable. It's interesting to see sort of how that plays out on live. But yeah, I mean, like, for me, I'm like, I'm hyped because in some ways, I get to play the live deck that I was most excited for Lissandra before. It was like, hey, I really like this all-in combo Lissandra deck where it's like Lissandra, Talia, Imagine Possibilities, or sorry, what's the card? The like double effect
Yeah,
countdown and like all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm going all in for like 4 Frozen Thralls by round 6. Like that's my goal, or something like that, right? And I'm like, that's what that deck's about. And it hasn't been, and maybe it will be, and maybe it won't. And that's sort of some of the fun, I think, is like
yeah.
seeing which versions work out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from my Twitter feed today that people are saying, "Yeah, Watcher on turn 5 seems good," and there's just 4 thralls everywhere. So
Yeah, yeah,
it is
totally.
happening. It is
Yeah,
happening. That's actually really
yeah,
interesting though, because yeah, like you said, the Spectral Matron version completely took off. It was a pretty dominant force in the seasonal and in general, just in the meta for a while. And yeah, I mean that deck's been bonkers, and now there's this whole other the Frozen Thralls are really going to come out and start swinging now, because before
yeah.
they weren't really that much of a threat. Now it's when you have 5 of them by turn 5, it's scary.
The spicy. Yeah, I'm all about that all in. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
when it works, it works.
Yeah.
So, just talking a little bit more about the release before we get to this most recent one, what have been some of your favorite things that you've seen the community make outside of what you guys saw internally? Was there anything that caught you off guard in that way?
Make you mean like fan art kind of stuff, or
Oh,
do
I
you
mean
mean
like
like that?
decks, yeah, like decks
Oh, okay.
or combos even.
Um, I mean, hmm,
I mean, if you're prepped for all of it, too.
favorite deck. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, in some ways it's like it's weird because like to me I'm kind of interested in like uh seeing some of the decks we made getting realized and some of the decks we anticipated being changed and distorted. And I like seeing a variety of that
Yeah,
personally. Like I think that's in some ways some of the fun of a designer is like uh, getting to see the toys you made used in ways you didn't expect, and also in some cases ways you did expect. It's um, like I feel like some of the more dominant ones have been like sort of what we were expecting, but a bit of the twist, where it's like Lysandra or uh, Nasus, for example.
yeah,
Like Nasus was one where I was like, hey, like I could see Nasus landing, and people are like, this is They Who Endure but worse, like why would we run this? And I'm like, yeah, I could see that totally happening, and I was a little nervous it would happen that way,
yeah.
but it hasn't hasn't panned out that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Like I'm glad people are having fun with Nasus, and Nasus is doing what Nasus was meant to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I hope hopefully with this release, the other Ascendant champions also get to like shine a bit more. Like hopefully uh, the new tools we give to Shurima, and other things to build around. Hopefully those help out
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's definitely an opinion people had. I mean, Nasus was probably rated slightly low coming into that release. He was
Yeah.
more, kind of looked down on, like you said, slightly worse endurer, and go from there. But yeah, he was dominant. He did extremely well. So everyone's proud
Yeah.
of our Susan. Yeah,
Yeah. I think if I had to guess whether Nasus or Kindred would take off, I would have guessed Kindred.
I
I
was
mean,
with
yeah.
you. Yeah, I put
Yeah.
my eggs in that basket too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the other ones saw their days too. Like that's the cool part about. I mean, all of them except Talia really saw a lot of good play right at the beginning, and now I feel like Talia is going to have her like super good moment, and it's probably not going to be in like a Malphite deck. It might just end up being in a Lysandra absolute all in monster deck, and that might end up being the move. I mean, it's good to see
Oh
all the
yeah.
support coming back. I can
Yeah.
tell which one you're rooting for sure.
I feel like if that deck gets popular, people start really running landmark removal, and we'll see what
Yeah,
happens. I don't
right.
know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to be the one that pushes it over. So
Yeah.
we can dive in and start talking about all the cards from Guardians of the Ancient. And, I'm going to just start since you were the one that brought Shurima to the game. Let's just start with Shurima, if that's okay with you. And
Sure.
this time before, last podcast, we ended up just kind of going through all the champions. There's, so many champions to talk about. This time we can go through the three champions, but maybe a couple support cards if we have time just to talk about some of
Hmm.
that. But first up
Hmm.
is the only one that I'm actually like very familiar with in League. So Zilean is like one of my favorite supports of all time. He's and that's probably trolling because my friends hate when I play him support, but still, he's incredibly fun. But his lead kit is so wide. I mean, you have the bombs, you have the
Hmm.
resurrection, you have the time shenanigans, you even have like an XP sharing effect in his passive. So I was
Yeah.
super curious as to see which way you guys would go, and you ended up going with a little bit of everything, but bombs were the main focus. Can you just talk about how you ended up at that point?
Yeah. Um, Zillion, as you said, yeah, there's a lot of like hooks you could go off of there, and in general, he was a really great fit for some of the set themes we were going for, like time and inevitability were like major themes we were embracing, and so
Yeah.
Zillion was a great thematic anchor for a lot of that, and in some ways it kind of got distributed among a lot of cards. Like he kind of has these like more predict focused like humans that he works with, and then he has kind of these more like timeless like advanced kind of themed cards with like the clockwork kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, for Zillion in particular, I would say part of the iteration was sort of informed by what was happening around him, where it's like, hey, like um, we could have focused him more in advance, but in some ways it kind of felt like it started competing a bit with Talia, where it's like
Hmm.
um, if they're both these landmark champions, that might be a little all in on landmarks, and also a bit less like makes it so it's harder for them to branch out and play with other champs like Lysandra and Malphite. So for him, we were like. We ended up, I would say, moving the advanced cards more into his followers and spells and less onto him himself. And then
Hmm.
he got to focus more on time bombs and kind of just being a nexus of those powers. Part of that also came from us iterating Shrima away from getting AoE stuff. I think
Hmm.
there's there's a sort of contrast, but also comparison to make with Freljord, where it's like they both have these harsh environment themes that I think if you let them will tend to iterate towards the same space. And so, at times we explored Shima having more AoE damage, but in the end we were like, hey, it probably shouldn't be a major strength of theirs. In the same way like Avalanche or something is good in Freljord. And um, part of that was like, hey, like time bombs can be a special Zillion thing, but probably shouldn't be a collectible card. And so like the pieces kind of assembled over time where it was like, hey, it's cool that Zillion has this AoE tool that like really fits his league theme kit. We probably won't build the cards around it because we
Right.
don't want Shurima to have that much AoE burn. And then we kind of ended up just letting his level two just go nuts with like time lord stuff. Like we
Yeah.
kind of like
For
yeah,
sure.
like picking one particular piece of what was left for his level two uh, ended up feeling kind of constrained. So we kind of just like
Hmm.
let him go crazy with some unique effect. And so um, basically, as long as he felt like a Time Lord, we were happy. And then like among the beats we were looking at, like which of these should be constrained to the Zillion card and which can live in the whole Shriman ecosystem, we were like AoE damage should be confined to his champion slot. That should not
Hmm.
be a general tool for the region. And then let him be part of a larger sort of time ecosystem of advance and predict and other versions of time themes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear because it's like very just different how the game can be designed in that way. Because essentially now you have Zillion, who is if you want that AOE removal, you need to take him. But a lot of times that's not always the case, right? Like Ash can just come in with frostbites, but also you see her flash freeze spell in tons of decks just because it's a good combat trick. So very
Hmm.
interesting to hear that design saying you want to actually limit it to his package and there's no spell that makes time bombs. I was kind of expecting that when he first got released. Is there going to be something else that adds more time bombs? But it's just him right now and he is just creating the time bomb. So if you want that AoE ping, you go with Zilean. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
I can tell you from personal, I we're recording day of release, but the only thing I've been playing today is Zilean. So Zillion's been an absolute blast so far. He's one of my favorite
Great.
characters, and totally like the Time Lord thing. From an art standpoint, we've talked about art with Mel Lee before and things in the narrative of the story, but you guys destroyed Zilean. I mean, he's perfect. He's absolutely insane in this game looking, and his sound effects are
Yeah.
like infinity gems and stuff. It's wild.
Yeah. I think they did an amazing job on him. Yeah, he's like really cool. I think for me as someone who's like played League for a really long time,
Yeah.
it's there are some of those champs that have kind of lingered in the old champion pool that like could maybe use some modernization
Yeah.
and in some ways like for lore it's really fun to get to work on those because you get to see the art team kind of breathe new life into the champion, and that's really cool. Where I'm like, when I look at the Zilean art in this game,
Yeah.
it's recognizable as Zilean, but also it's almost like a whole new character like looking at him in his art, so it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. Something me and the other two co-hosts aren't here today, but also just our community's been doing is just anytime new art comes out, we're always like, all right, like that's who I want to be in the MMO. But it just changes every like 2 days, you know. But I am stuck with like I will be a chronomancer in the League MMO now because just this whole kit is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, I
uh,
feel that.
yeah, well, you can join me in Shurima. um, So there's a lot of advanced cards in this, and we talked briefly about it a little bit. You say it's a little bit of payoff for the Frozen Thralls and the inevitability theme that we have going on in here. Some people were thinking there would be a larger payoff besides Thralls and maybe Sundisk. Were the advanced cards mostly made in mind with those two cards or with those two mechanics, or is there anything else that you were thinking about when you made those, like the rock golems or anything along those lines?
Yeah, for the big advanced cards, I would say those are the main ones in mind for players. Uh, I think it's a little weird because I think players, well, I mean, maybe we're just wrong about this, but like the idea is that I think there are multiple ways to build both the Lysandra and Sundisk card package, and one of those ways is advance heavy. And so, like a Sundisk advance heavy deck, I think plays kind of different, right? It's like Azir basically auto levels by late game,
Right.
if you play him hand, and then from there, like if you're playing like one clock hand and some other of those advancers, like it's done. And it's like
Yeah.
it's a pretty different feeling than if you're going for a natural level up over the course of the game with like Renekton, and it's also kind of different than if you're going for the spell combo, level up all ascended champions. And so, um, yeah, I mean, for Lysandra, it's like uh, the payoff that the current Watcher combo goes with is like pretty different in vibe, right? And so
Yeah.
this one is more it's like, hey, like if you're gonna get 2 or 4 8/8 overwhelms, on turn 5 or 6 or something, like that seems like worth investing time into. And then, like, um, I think to some degree we're kind of I don't know if cautious is the word, but like I mean I could see a world where someone's like, "Hey, where's the card that's like countdown 20, you win the game or something?" And I'm like, "We could do that." I think we were nervous to make it so divorced from unit interactions that it's
Hmm.
just that. Um, it's like Star Spring turned up to 11. I'm like, I don't know if we actually want that in the game, or it's
Right.
certainly a high risk space to explore. And so I think we were more excited for things where it's like, "Hey, these big landmark things, they involve units in some way, or the finale is a really absurdly powerful unit or something." And so
Right.
it's like, yeah, like hopefully at the end of this you get, multiple thralls or a watcher or an ascended champion, and that'll win you the game in an exciting way. And it's not just like you playing solitaire with a landmark and just stalling forever. I think we were a little hesitant to do that, although it would be, unique in some ways, and I'm sure some players would like it. I think there's
Yeah.
risks there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Probably safe to say the majority would complain a lot about
Yeah.
that. We've seen Star Spring get plenty of complaints, and that's still one of
Yeah.
my favorite decks to play too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but I totally see what you're saying there. And there's we'll talk about Malphite in a second, but there was a lot of speculation that he himself would be a landmark with a countdown and stuff like that. So people thought he would be the payoff, and kind of kept pushing. But I really like your answer of there's just multiple ways to build the Sun Disc deck. It doesn't just have to be the combo of play the 7 cost, level up all your level 1 champions. It doesn't have to just be, Azir is a free level up and then try to get Renekton damage. Yeah, I really like that as a look. And it's something that, realistically there wasn't a whole lot of advance before today. So, now it's going to get looked at again. And then if that's viable, it'll turn up.
Yeah, and then yeah, obviously for the smaller advance or like the AoE advance kind of stuff, that one's more trying to play in like this might be a fun tool in the Taliyah space.
Yeah.
It's hard to tune those just right because they're pretty narrow, but
Hmm.
hopefully some of them are fun to play around. Like yeah, I mean, if you can get a board of several landmarks and do the advance one, I think it's pretty satisfying play. But yeah, I don't know how reliable that is yet.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that card's actually awesome. I love Imagine Possibilities because it's got the back end of just make another landmark too. So
Yeah, yeah. We try to make the landmark meta cards have some backup. either it's a unit with a body or it has some sort of secondary spell effect,
Right.
like predict or something that goes with it. Yep.
Right. Yeah, super
Yep.
sneaky to make like the actual Roiling Sands have a 2 mana cost. That then Malphite comes out and you're like, you need 12
Yeah.
mana. Well, Rockhopper gives you none, and then you click on Rockhopper and you're like, oh, that's a 2 mana landmark that you get for free. You just don't think about it. So
Yeah.
very sneaky. There's two other Shurima cards I want to talk about real quick. I think they're both like immensely important to their archetype. So we'll just talk about why they came out now instead of before, and if you agree that they're pretty immensely important. But the two that I'm talking about are the Profiteer, which is the gain a lucky find, and the Merciless Hunter, which is the grant vulnerable 3/4/4/3 fearsome unit. So why wait till this release if that's a question that you can answer? And also, do you think they are very much staples in their respective archetypes?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably I don't know how. Yeah, it might not be as extreme for Profiteer. Merciless Hunter was definitely a card that the final design, like environment designer team, was like, let's make like a really heavy hitter, kind of like on the early end of mid range kind of unit for Shrima,
Yeah.
and that one that one was definitely like this should be very playable. And Profiteer, I think that was true to some degree, but I think it's probably going to be a bit more archetype bound.
Yeah.
And then I think Scrying Sands might also sort of fit this camp of, I guess, just a really playable card. And I think, yeah, I mean, definitely, I hope Renekton and Sivir get a bit more revitalization there. I think I would also just say I hope Shurima gets a bit more revitalized just from the power of those sort of more flexible tools.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. To me, it's actually a space that I'm somewhat new to. Like, it was pretty interesting when we started working more heavily with like the sort of final design, environment design kind of people, where they were like, hey, like, what are the sort of mainline pieces that we want to be in Shurima that really like um, can be sort of these backbone cards that you can like sort of safely include in a lot of decks and can form a lot of like the sort of strengths in the curve for the region. And it's a pretty exciting question to answer, but also one that's kind of nerve-wracking because it's like they're, you know, in some ways intentionally pushing things a bit, and so like making
Right.
sure you push it but don't push it too hard is like pretty nerve-wracking. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm like the general question of like how many good tools do you need to get in a region for it to be as played as the other one is definitely like a problem space that we're still navigating.
Right.
And when you're trying to release a region complete-ish, but also has enough room to like still kind of grow, it's like kind of a weird balancing act there. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I kind of rambled off topic, but yeah, hopefully those are useful stream and staples. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
Definitely. I mean, I don't envy that job because that's definitely difficult. Because then, if you release everything
yeah,
early, it's just kind of like, all right, well, now the stuff we released doesn't look as exciting. But now, Merciless Hunter coming out now, it's like, oh my gosh, this completes this deck I was working on, this deck, and it's the Iron Ballista of like the Overwhelm decks that has been needed for a while. Really happy you said Scrying Sands as well. I literally just finished writing an article today about like 5 cards that are like, all right, probably going to be meta defining or at least very impactful. And
mhm,
Merciless Hunter and Scrying Sands are both on there because I'm just like, all right, these cards are
yeah,
so much value for their
right,
mana cost. It's absolutely incredible.
yep. Merciless Hunter was definitely designed like first to be in the Renekton deck, and then we realized like, hey, like we like this being a common. Like let's sort of like let
Hmm.
other decks maybe at least unlimited, but maybe even other decks outside of constructed.
Right.
And yeah, obviously like curves right into Renekton. He's gonna get the overwhelm and the grow. And also like you can use it to like pin a unit so that the fearsome can hit face. There's just
Yeah.
there's a lot going on there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, he's super fantastic. One of my favorite cards this release for sure. It's always a common too. I'm always like, man, the commons get me.
yeah. I mean, if you're trying to just define a region strength, especially if you want it to affect limited, then common's the place to be. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
So we have Malphite up next. We move over to Targon. So Targon does have the most champions in the game. So now with Aphelios being the hero expansion, now they have Malphite. So question about Malphite in general, he's definitely a fan favorite. From what I've taken from the league community is that Malphite is everyone's like favorite rock. So, but also at the same time, there's not a whole lot known about Malphite in general from the lore. So how was designing
Yeah.
this mountain, and what was the process like for that?
That's a good question. I mean, I think Malphite is um I feel like Malphite's one of those like kind of lighthearted comfort food champs, like almost like a Ramus or something, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he's kind of beloved in a particular way. He's not beloved like Yasuo's beloved. I think there's something different about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, it's not memey, but it's like something in that direction compared to some traditional like this is my main. I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no, I think that's
yeah,
definitely fair because he's a rock man, right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I feel like I think in League he probably has like maybe 10 VO lines max. He's just like a really old and really simple guy.
right.
I think uh sorry, so the uh question about lots of champion in I mean I think right now I think like I wouldn't say like the champ number difference is like big enough to where it's a major factor in normal set conversations. I could
Right.
see that being a case where like if we kept releasing more and more target champs we might have to like be more mindful of that, but like one-offs here and there of random regions I think we sort of don't let like affect decision making too much about like what's right for this champion in this region for the set.
Nice.
um, and I think for Malphite, the primary thing that we made sure we really wanted to hit, I guess there's two. One is his ult. Unstoppable Force is just really iconic,
Yeah.
and it's just like the big playmaker. You can build Malphite in a lot of ways in League of Legends, in somewhat memey ways. But one thing you're doing for sure is your ult is a big high moment, and it's a big playmaker, whether you're tank or AP or whatever the hell you're doing with Malphite. And I think uh, the the second note, I guess I would generally say, is just him feeling like a tanky, just a tank in like the traditional sense in League. He builds a lot of armor and health often, and he's kind of got a lot of defensive abilities and synergies. And so the fact that his body is just so just like yeah, just uh, tough and big health pool and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But overall, we didn't really want it to be too complicated. We think of Malphite as kind of a um, simple, elegant design champion in League, classic initiator tank who can go in with an ult and survive a lot of damage. And we didn't want to go too crazy with like getting all of his spells and tactical gameplay into that sort of base design there. We did try to like reference his other spells and stuff a bit with the other spells in his overall card
For
package.
sure,
But
yeah.
overall, we wanted him to be like, I'm a big tank who hits hard with his ultimate, and just make sure we nail that. And then from there, kind of use the supporting cards to flesh out some flavor, like Chip obviously, and his spells. Yeah.
Yeah, besides just Ground Slam being another huge card for him, and it's also like really, other than Divergent Paths, like the first fast speed spell in Targon, so that's adding the versatility. But like you said, like the fan favoriteness of Chip, and then I even lump in Blue Sentinel because people were freaking out that blue buff was in the game as well.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
they're both
yeah,
pretty big as far as adding fan favorites. So I guess if you can, just what was up with adding blue buff at this point and Chip? I mean, if you have anything to say about him.
yeah.
If I don't ask
Really
about
early
Chip, I'm
on.
gonna get yelled at.
No, we
So
got to talk about Chip.
have
I
to.
expect like 10 minutes to be devoted to Chip in this
Sounds
interview.
good.
Yeah. Um, when we started on the um, landmark geomancy kind of directional exploration, really early on, it was like, let's get Blue Sentinel in here because it's just like kind of
Hmm.
an Earth Elemental thing from League.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, like, yeah, our team, the team that working on set four, or sorry, the Sharima set, really early on was like, um, we were all excited for League references, and so early on it was kind of meant to. It looked more raid bossy, like it was like a really big stat line and really expensive.
Oh
It
well.
got weird because like mana you want most early in the curve, and
Right.
it's kind of themed around giving you mana when it dies. So why would you get an expensive thing to die? And it was a little awkward. Also, kind of competed with like just playing Malphite and ending the game. And so overall, we eventually kind of shrank it down to be more like yeah,
Hmm.
almost evokes like how in an early jungle clear, it's like it's bigger than a one drop, but it's still like kind of a thing you can clear out in a normal
Right.
run of operations. And so yeah, definitely. We were definitely excited just to get the League reference in there, and we obviously knew it had to have to. We wanted to do with mana, but we were a little nervous to just give Targon, free flexible ramp in the general sense. I think we want to be mindful of
Yeah.
like how many control tools we give to Targon or any region in particular,
Right.
and so it just being like basically a single turn, like you get a free spike in your mana curve for a brief moment. I think fit for us, and
Fits the theme perfectly too, right? The blue buff goes away after 3 minutes or
yeah,
so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so hopefully that lands pretty well. Chip was really there was a designer on the team early on. His screen name is Unconquerable, Sean Rivera. He like we do a lot of like placeholder designer names, and he was just like, yeah, the one drop's going to be named Chip, just like a name for a small rock thing. But then yeah, basically everyone thought that idea was cute, like a small rockling
Yeah.
thing, and just as like the concept. And so when the art team got that, the theme team were like, okay, it's going to keep the name Chip, and we'll basically make a character that's just a cute rock thing. And yeah, right away everyone's like, we love Chip.
Yeah.
When the personalization kind of folks were like, hey, are there any fun units that could be a good guardian? We're like, we got one for you. It's
Take
Chip.
Chip.
It's Chip. And so yeah, that was pretty much smooth sailing. Everyone was all on board for Chip. Chip's design stayed mostly similar. I mean, it fluctuated a little bit until it landed on the text. It's like the high flexibility version of the text right now. Like you don't have to worry about sequencing really.
Right.
But overall, basically kept that general shape
Hmm.
of a simple landmark synergy one drop throughout there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could see anything behind the scenes, I want to see the sales number on the Chip Guardian because I gotta just imagine it's absolutely obnoxious.
Yeah, Chip. Yeah, there were so many Chip memes, and I love anytime players send like post or send memes, I'm like all about it. Dragon Chow, Chip,
Yeah.
all the meme characters, I just love that. So
Him keeping his
Super
playtesting name just reminded me a lot of Soul Squirrel. That's one Sean was mentioning that
yeah,
kept its playtest name. So that's it. I mean, both of those are like knocks out of the park. They're both home run characters. So, so
yeah.
congrats.
I get a weird sense of pride when they keep my temp name, which is probably bad because I think it can lead to confusion in development when the names are close enough to be believable but aren't actually accurate to the theme team's intent. That can cause problems. But also, it's just so satisfying when people like hear ideas. So yeah, it's a little I don't know. But like there's definitely examples of that where it's like our temp name, like what's this, like the clock hand was a temp name I put in there, an instant century.
Nice.
I just put those in there. I just thought like some sort of giant clockwork like behemoth thing.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, people were like, yeah, it's cool, and so they just kept it, and I was like, oh yeah, I love it.
Got one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I can tell that the league, I think we talked last time how Exhaust was it's a summoner spell. It made a spell in lore now, and now you have Blue Sentinel. So the league love is definitely leaking into the game, which it always has been, but it's cool to see, like, direct, exact, not just, this character has a voice line here, but it's like, yep, this is the Blue Golem that you fight. This is the summoner spell Exhaust. So now, it's cool to daydream about, like, what's Ignite going to look like? What is X going to look like? And, it definitely has worked out in that way. Real quick,
Yeah.
Oh, good. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna. Yeah, it's just a small story, but basically, like, we actually went through like a leagueification pass on the game during R&D, and so
Oh, wow.
a lot of the card names that came out in set one actually were not league themed before and
Hmm.
became league themed. Like, Health Potion used to be just called Respite, and it was sort of a generic like heal theme, and that's like.
Nice.
And the elixirs were added and stuff like that. So we actually ended up doing that. And so like part of set development now is like do a theme pass on your set and look for opportunities to like leagueify things, or if there's something in league that
Yeah.
like you would expect for these champs, like try to fit it in, that kind of thing. So yeah.
And leagueification is now a new step of the design process. I didn't know about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, last thing about Targon real quick. I would hurt myself if I didn't ask this because it's my personal favorite Targon theme is Daybreak. So Daybreak got two new toys that are both awesome. I mean, Sunhawk's probably, that art is literally like the background of my computer at the moment. So that guy's amazing, but he's also just an absolute beast of a 2-drop. So why was like now the right time to give Daybreak some new cards?
I tend to think of Daybreak as just a sort of general Targon tool in the same way that like I tend to think like a card in Bilgewater shouldn't need to justify super hard why it's using Plunder. It's just supposed to be a thing that the region's pretty good at, and I think Daybreak's a similar thing where it's like if you want to sort of Targonify something, sort of give it like a small amount of a hoop to jump through and a bit more Dex energy, you can kind of pair it into that Daybreak there. And so I think it was Noah, the final designer lead. He was, I think, the one who was throwing those in there. But yeah, I was all for it. I mean, originally, Daybreak, yeah, early on in exploration, there was like on the table, like, what if there's going to be like a major Daybreak archetype for the set in general? Just because like there's like Sun themes in Shurima and Targon.
Right.
That ended up not working out for some reasons, but yeah, I think in general, like it's a good sort of evergreen kind of mechanic in Targon, and I think we'll probably be peppering it in the future in general. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, always love to see a callback to that. And was Unto Dusk got put in recently for Nightfall, so it's nice to see Daybreak also get
Yeah,
similar love here. Yeah, and I remember discussing with you that the Sand Soldiers at one point were elite last time you were on in the design process, and something I was pushing earlier was like they are definitely going to have Daybreak in Shurima, and just
yeah,
because
yeah,
Sunz and blah blah blah. So it's cool
yeah.
to hear that at least was thought about. I was onto
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it's tough because like there's always yeah, a lot of times when you're working on a set, it's like kind of picking your battles there, where it's like at one point the Sun Disk had text resembling all Shrimans and Daybreak allies have +1/+1 or something. Like there was all sorts of cute little things we were talking about, but
Uh,
like certain priorities need to be made, and it's like as the pattern around level 3 built up, it was like the Sun Disk has no room for this text, and like the pattern has no room for this. So yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah, yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. Maybe someday in the future. I mean, yeah, the revisit mechanic spaces can be tricky.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we discussed it, but yeah, like oftentimes they're already kind of coherent decks, and so you often end up being either redundant or kind of watering down their identities. So that's tricky to do just right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it makes total sense. So we have one
yeah.
more champion to talk about, one more region that has definitely needed some love. Unfortunately, Irelia is the champion out of these three I know the least about, simply because I ban her in most league games because she destroys me. So I got blasted.
You know enough.
Yeah, I know plenty. Literally just
Yeah,
got ran over twice, and I was like, I'm pretty much good here. So we're just
I'm
gonna ban her. But yeah, Blade Dancing, has 1,000 knives champion. How did you go about designing her?
She was, I mean, pretty early on, I was excited to include her in the set. There's like a lot of kind of, it was originally more for martial vibes, kind of getting that like Jarvan, Azir kind of themes, and
Hmm,
sort of she fit into there. And she's also just a popular League character, and so we like getting a few popular characters in the sets.
for sure.
And so, anyways, yeah, so we were excited to include her. Overall, the original direction with her, I don't remember if I don't know if we talked about it last time, but like her original mechanics were actually pretty different. She was a uh, I don't even know if this is coherent to normal people, but she was attack keyword matters basically. It was like any card that has like highlighted attack do an effect.
Yeah.
It was like the blade dancers would trigger off of those. It was
Oh,
like
okay.
it was like a whole synergy thing. So in a way that like some cards will specifically call out like last breath or something or daybreak.
Right.
It was like this was a tribe that cares about attack triggers,
That's cool.
which is exciting. There's like a lot of deck building options, but also part of the problem is there were so many deck building options that it was a lot to balance around, and a lot of like I don't know if power creep's the word, but just like yeah, a lot of risk points all over the place. And also like if you've played a support heavy archetype, sequencing attack triggers at the attack step can be pretty gnarly. And so overall, just for the sake of like it being at all balanceable and also us being able to deliver something that was satisfying and not like overwhelmingly complicated there, we went with we decided to pivot basically. And I think it was Noah also for that one. He was suggesting like, hey, like Azir's text basically was settled pretty early on, so we actually had that text already. And it's like, hey,
Hmm.
what if we make a token deck with Azir, using blades in this kind of novel way, where they form their free attack, and so Azir obviously gets to trigger off of that. It's almost like it's Ionia's version of Scout at this point.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's a really cool direction. Like if if we can sell the metaphor, it not being too weird that blades are units. As long as we can sell that, I think this is a really cool idea. And so,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, for me, I'm like, I really like Minion Master Swarm kind of decks, and so I was like really excited from that standpoint, basically from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, as long as people can sort of conceptually think of Irelia as that sort of almost Magneto-y type of like throwing blades out and sending
Right.
them forward, I think as long as that works for people, then I think we're in a good spot, and hopefully people find that exciting and resonant for their vision of the character.
Yeah, I love it for sure. I'm with you there. I always played like necromancers and Diablo and such, so summoning armies is
Yeah, totally.
super my thing with Azir and all. So definitely what I like, and I think something that you did super well with Irelia and I guess landmarks in general was one of the biggest issues with landmarks and with swarm mechanics is board space, obviously. So only 6 slots, but I think we talked about this last time a little bit. Was the countdown theme of essentially, your landmark comes in, has an effect, leaves, has another effect, etc., etc., etc. So it bounces in and out, doesn't eat up a slot your whole game, but it does its job. These blades never eat up a board slot because they can't come back to your board, and you still get the swarm mechanics there. So it's I think
Mhm.
genius in that sense because it allows an actual like swarm mechanic to function, similar to how I thought Azir did it pretty well as well. He's
Yeah.
they're just being attacking the board, but they can still come back to the board. So now you take that even another step further. These blades literally cannot come back to your board. Like I guess if they get silenced, if someone really cares to send a
Right.
blade back,
Yeah. And
but
you call them, yeah.
realistically, yeah, they
You can.
can't. They can't come back to your board. So it's
Yeah.
super smart way to make that work. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, yeah. Just today, I think I had like three Emperor's Deus and an Azir and an Irelia on the board at some point, and I was like, yeah, just the fact that these are temporary attacker only is the only reason this works at all. If they had to use back row slots, like this whole
Right.
archetype would have been so different. So
But that's
yeah, I think that.
exactly how they play in League too, right? It's so smart. It's like in League, Azir sits back, but it feels like you have an army in their face, right? And it's
Right.
it's the same as
Yeah.
Echo. So beautiful transition there. Um, I had some other questions. I'm gonna go a little off the wall here. Just to ask one other question about Ionia in general. You added a little bit of recall synergy, and you added
Mhm.
some swappage, which we haven't seen anything that swaps since Stand United. So can you just talk about why those came in now? Stand United is probably my favorite spell in the game from Shen Lux era, but I'm terrified
Oh.
of the 2 cost swaps. So can you talk about
Yeah.
those shortly?
Yeah, sure. I I mean to some degree this is going to be an answer that like is going to be just my take. Like I can't speak for all of the live design and final design folks.
For sure.
I think in general Ionia maybe from a balance standpoint has suffered a bit insofar as its overall utility and sort of power budget I think has been really narrowly placed in a couple of removal and answer cards, and so the
Mm.
result is like you know a mana cost on a single simple spell goes up by 1 or something, and it's just like the whole region, its play rate drops 10% kind of thing. It's just like really sharp,
Yeah.
and so in general I think um, I was interested, and I think Final maybe in some similar ways we're interested in giving Ionia some utility that's not so just like here's here's an answer card, and like here's like let's actually make some cards Ionia is fun to play, is happy to play with itself. Like it's going to assemble the pieces and have fun when those go off
Right.
together, and not be so much about it's the the 2C counter spell that had to get nerfed to 3C or whatever. It's like not going into that space as much.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm like droplet and the swap cards and stuff like that. To me, I think that represents a bit of like moving in that direction a bit more. Like let's explore what Ionia gets to be good at for its own sake, and
Right.
not in hosing other strategies, and hopefully also have more tuning levers than just a single mana cost, like Will of Ionia or something like that.
Right.
And so yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how the balance lands there, and it's possible that they'll need to get tuned. But I think of it. I think of that as sort of a general value, and so being excited to explore that on like sort of multiple fronts there. And I think recall. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be enough to make recall like an A tier deck at the moment, but I think recall is a strategy that we're generally excited for Ionia to explore more. And then I would also say that swap. I mean, I don't know how many permutations of swap we're going to do, especially because we're printing one that's like pretty clean right now. But
Yeah.
but that kind of way of like Ionia feeling like martial and skillful and tricky in some ways like that. I think like the swap mechanic is like a good way to kind of express that and let that be a strength of theirs.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm also excited to explore that more. And yeah, also scared of how the balance will land there.
Yeah.
Obviously pairing that with elusive, has a lot of power, but we'll see. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I do really like it in the sense of like it really does give Ionia a little bit more of its own identity. It's something that a lot of people have said have been lacking, but like you said, it's really comes down to moving up Will of Ionia to 5 cost, deny used to be 3, etc., etc., and it just kind of makes these you just want to splash Ionia for certain things now. But at the core of it, I like the swarm synergy that Ionia has with the Navori. I like the the swap synergy that they had originally, and then the self recalling stuff is pretty nuts. And I think all these are really good key pieces that help at least push it in that direction. And I'm super excited to play crazy combo decks with like Shiraza and Horns of the Dragon and just absolute nonsense. So
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
don't just have to run Overwhelm with Horns of the Dragon anymore. You can,
Yeah, I'm excited and scared of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
for
sure.
sure.
Yeah, two mana burst is terrifying, but I love it. I love it. I'm mostly
Spicy.
excited for it.
Yeah,
Behind the scared.
yeah.
We have a few community questions. We probed the Discord. We eliminated anything that was completely off the wall, so these are all safe. But we'll ask these to wrap up here. In your mind, Poco Loco wants to know what distinguishes this set from the previous set.
By set, it's referring to like from Empires or from the
Yeah,
Targon set. Do
from
you know which one?
Empires, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. I think. I mean, obviously it's a smaller set, so it's not going to get to play with as many toys. But for me, I think if I was to like, I don't know, try to kind of back of the box selling point it. The ones that come to mind are, I would say, the advance landmarks in general. Hopefully, I hope feel like a more like a basically a finished package after this, or at least much closer one where you actually get a lot more landmarks to play with from Malphite, and then obviously you have all the advanced cards that you can play with Talia and Malphite and Lysandra and Sundisk and all that stuff. So hopefully, like landmarks feel like a real thing to play with now, and have like a good amount of synergy tools to choose from. And uh, I mean, obviously, I hope the new champs are fun to build around. I think Malphite may be a little bit like, you're going to pick Talia or Lysandra and sort of run with that, but hopefully, like Irelia has some fun combos, and Zilean hopefully is like fairly modular, so you get to have fun exploring that space. Um, I hope Shurima is generally a more competitive region. We've already talked about some of the tools we're shipping there, but hopefully those are helpful for shoring up Sharima and just making sure it has useful things to contribute to any deck that's thinking about running it. And I guess I would kind of extend that to Ionia too, maybe in a sense of like I hope this set helps revitalize Ionia as a region and gets people excited to run it again more, even outside of Irelia, and explore all those new tools we just talked about.
That's awesome. Yeah, it definitely seems like a set that's just adding on so much to existing archetypes that were definitely needed. Two more for you. We have Extranji asking, was Shurima designed with these smaller expansions in mind? And if so, how is that design process different if you're designing a set as a whole? If you can answer that.
Shurima was part way through. We realized we were going to want to split it up. I mean, the set was kind of made in sort of it was like paused at various times in development because like we were working on several sets at the same time that had various deadlines for different groups, and also the game obviously was like shipping and beta and all that stuff, and so yeah, by the time the Targon set had basically settled on here's what a set release should look like, we were like, oh, okay, we need to like figure out how that applies to us at this point. And so it was a little bit of column A and B, where it's like early work was not based off of that, and then late work we knew about that and could try to incorporate it a bit more. I I think I think it's still like a space where we don't have like we never know exactly how to do it. Like for this block, like I mean, I can't. Yeah, we don't. Y'all don't know all the champs, so I can't speak to all the options we were considering. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of considerations in terms of like, does each set, have a fun variety of decks to build?
Right.
Does it have some recognizable characters that everyone's going to be excited for? Do they have like internal variety, but also internal themes? Yeah, there's a lot of factors to consider there. One thing I will say it did was when we realized we were going to split up the set like this, we did basically go to the file and open up a bunch of card slots for old regions primarily, so we could
nice.
do revitalization efforts. So like some of those like Daybreak cards and other stuff that you saw there, that was us after the realization that we're going to split it up. Be like, hey, let's make sure that things other than the new champions have fun stuff to build around, and so let's add a few, hopefully, meaningful kind of revitalizer cards for all the other regions as well for each of the drops. And so hopefully people who like the other regions have some fun stuff to build around, even if their release didn't feature a champion.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
those spoiler days are some of my favorite because I feel like those are some of the spiciest cards. Like that new P and Z guy is absolutely bonkers, and I love the monster hunting bow from Bilgewater. All those cards are super fun to break down when they come out because they
Yeah.
really are nuts.
Yeah, I really like as like I was someone who played like Netrunner a lot, like I like LCGs. I'm someone who really loves my decks feeling like a thing I revisit over and
Right.
over the course of an environment. And yeah, I mean, as much as we can do that, I love it. Obviously time is a constraint and we have other things to worry about, but like yeah, to the extent that I can, yeah, I love doing that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Last
Yeah.
question, and definitely the hardest of all, and the one that you will be judged the most for. But what is your favorite board card back guardian combination?
Oh, my favorite. Oh yeah, I feel like I have to pick a favorite. Yeah, okay. Um I let's see. Okay. I mean, I obviously I would say the two themes that I've gotten most attached to probably the Shurima theme stuff and the arcade stuff, I would say in general. Um
That's fair.
but part of it's like I obviously have a lot of affinity for Shurima, and then I also just like really colorful stuff and particles and crap.
Yeah,
So like a lot of my board play, I would say historically it was a lot of um uh, like arcade board. Card backs I kind of fluctuated by what was in the deck, and then I usually ran the minion guardian. Actually, I feel like the minion's like really cute. I like its
solid
like
pick. Yeah.
expressive eyes. Yeah. I also like yeah, like Rainbow Poro. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like I like kind of having different themes for different decks to some degree. But then when the Shurima set came out, I'm like, oh, and I have to decide like which of my sets I want to do the Shurima background. And then obviously now the chip's out, there's like a whole other thing, and
I was gonna
so
say if you
that's
don't
tough.
at least
Yeah,
say chip,
yeah.
no one's gonna
I feel
trust
like
you.
in some ways it's like the personalization team does their job too well, or I can't decide between which of these things I like, and I almost wish there was like a random button or something. Yeah, I don't know.
That's a
But
good
like right
feature.
now,
That's a really good feature.
like for now, one way I do it is basically like my different decks, I'll have different themes, and so it's like Chip definitely going in all the landmark decks,
Oh yeah,
100%. Um, Sharima for most of my ascended decks. I like the Azir card back too. I run the Azir card back in most of my Sharima decks.
solid choice. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like probably the contemporary answer would be like Chip, Azir card back, Sharima board, probably. Yeah.
Safe answer, solid answer, especially coming from the lead designer of the of that set. So
Yeah,
definitely
yeah. I'm biased. I'm not biased at all. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
very
How
safe
about you?
answer. I for that combo, currently I rock the definitely rock the Shurima board. It's amazing. Second favorite is got to be Ionia. Just like the wind chimes and stuff is
Mhm.
too good. Um, Guardian, we got to say Chip, I guess. Yeah, Chip is the correct
What's your
answer.
second favorite?
Oh,
Yeah, that's the
second
real
favorite
question.
Guardian. Got it. Second
Uh,
favorite. Honestly, I think it's probably Shuriman Cosmo, the dog. I really like the
oh
Shuriman
yeah,
version of the
Cosmo's
dog.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's probably my
yeah.
favorite card back. Was doing the seasonal card back, so I was proud of it. But now I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing the fist bump card back because I got it from Umbridge. So
Oh yeah,
only
yeah.
only fist bump from now on out. And then, but
Mm.
also like I'm not gonna lie, like some of those, like you said, the Azir one is so nice, but like the Renekton one, I was rocking that for every overwhelm
Mm-hmm.
game I played. I had to rep the Renekton card back, so
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
Chip is the
So, yeah, Chip's the yeah.
yeah.
Any other answer would be upsetting at this point.
Yeah,
So
anyone we would for sure get flamed if we didn't say Chip.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on again. Really appreciate it. Super insightful as always.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, can't wait to actually dig in. Like I said, I got to play a little bit with Zilean, but didn't even get to sleeve up anything else crazy yet. So really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy your night. We will get back to it. Anything else you want to leave us on? Any final words
Uh,
here?
no, I hope everyone has fun playing, and I'm looking forward to them getting to try some of the more social modes I've been working on. But that's the little TBD. But get hype, and yeah, I
That's
hope
it.
hope everyone enjoys the expansion.
Well, appreciate it, man. Until next time.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Take it easy. Thanks.